Welcome to Squirrel, the podcast for distracted writers, hosted by Candace J. Thomas and Jodi L. Milner.
Hi, welcome to Squirrel, the podcast for the distracted writer. My name is Candace J. Thomas.
And I'm Jodi L. Milner. Today, this is our very first episode, and we'd like to talk about why we felt so passionate about creating a podcast for distracted writers.
That's right. So tell us, Jodi, who you are and why you felt that this is a relevant podcast.
Well, I am a very distracted writer. I'm a fantasy author. I've put 3 books out so far and a whole bunch of short stories because, again, attention skills. And I feel like when I listen to writing podcasts, there isn't one that's just perfect for me. And like the writer's theme is, if you don't like what you're reading or listening to, you should make one.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes. How about you, Ken?
So I am a young adult fantasy author. I also do poetry. I do rom-coms. I do have some short stories. I do plays. Oh my goodness. There is just not anything that I'm really afraid of when it comes to writing. And I think one of the reasons why is because of the distractions. My brain kind of goes all directions. And so I have to I can't just focus on one genre. I need to have my hands in every single pot. And it's because of how my brain functions in thinking in different streams of where I want to write and what I want to write.
So we're here today to embrace that idea that even though you might be a distracted writer, there are still so many opportunities and so many ways that you can get your words into the world. And we would love to help you overcome those challenges. We also would like to talk about themes that excite us and all sorts of different writing topics that we feel are super relevant to everybody. So I'd love to talk about why we brainstorm together and the most perfect thing we can do right now is make a podcast. Why is ours going to be any different than anybody else's podcast out there?
Well, first it's us. I just want to say that because we're really pretty hysterical. But I also think that there are a lot of podcasts that don't directly speak to me, if that makes sense. I have a very full plate, being not even a writer, a mother, involved in so many different organizations and work and spreading my days just really thin. When do I have time to really listen to a podcast? What is going to be helpful to me? And also just focusing on my specific needs. Like I need little just pinpoints of information. I can't digest a whole thesis on what marketing is or what the fantasy arc, those kind of things. I need little nuggets of information that will speak directly to me that I will find useful and I can immediately put to work.
And I can totally empathize with that because bite-sized bits of knowledge sometimes are all I can absorb some days, where I want to have something that is both interesting, a little funny, but I can relate to. And I find there's a lot of podcasts out there that while the information is amazing, I don't relate to it because it's always like some amazing single woman who doesn't have, this is her career. She doesn't have a family she's taking care of. She doesn't have a different job she has to do. And so I'm like, but I can't relate to that because that's not me. Mm-hmm. And so I would love to have, all this specific good information that talks about how do you fit writing into a life that's already way too busy, because it's a passion. And I think everyone should be able to live their passions.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you a specific question, and I hope that you're okay with this. I want to know how you're distracted. Tell me about your neurodivergency.
Oh, hello. Right. Well, I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was in 3rd grade. I was in Mrs. Lisenby's class, and she really didn't like me. She wanted to throw me out a window, and she told my parents that. And that's when they're like, we should get you tested. Mrs. Lisenby, if you were out there, I'm so sorry. I was not a good student. And I do realize that after the medication. But that started my journey. And then as I've grown older, and I've had kids that have had very distinct challenges. And as we were learning how to process these challenges and how to work with them best, my oldest was diagnosed with high functioning autism. And as we were testing him, we were going through all of these different checkboxes and like forms you fill out. And I'm like, yes. And I started checking all these boxes off and I'm like, because ADHD didn't describe me as well as I thought it would. I never quite fit in the box. And so as I started going through all the different spectrum issues, I'm like, that sounds an awful lot like me on, these specific things. And so while I'm apparently very high functioning, everyone who knows me knows I'm really quirky, like no filter kind of quirky, which is again why podcasting is going to be so much fun.
Oh my God. That is very true.
Well, and how about you, Candy? What brings you to share this message with us?
Well, I never really was diagnosed with ADHD. It's very obvious that I have something like that. But the thing about me is I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was 16 and I was a junior in high school. So here, let's backtrack, those 16 years where I just felt that I was dumb. That was the issue. And I know that anybody who is dyslexic understands this because dyslexia is not just a reading problem. It's a complete social problem because reading has to do with everything. And when you feel like you can't comprehend, like I had extremely poor reading comprehension, which I know will really surprise people that know me now. But I had, when you have poor reading comprehension, that affects everything. That affects not only your reading and writing skills, but it affects your intake of information. So you might be in science class and you can't understand what the material is talking about. And throughout my entire education, I felt like I was really dumb. So, and you feel stupid. Like I didn't understand why other people were doing well in school. I didn't understand that because I just could not do well. And a lot of the times, when you hear people like skipping school, I would skip school. I wouldn't turn in assignments because I didn't want to know that I was actually had the proof and I was stupid. Isn't that the saddest thing?
That's tragic.
I know, but I know that anybody with dyslexia will understand this. Seriously. And I wish that I had been they didn't have like a lot of diagnoses. Like my parents weren't really proactive about that. I don't think they even saw that I was dyslexic or I was having problems because honestly, I was kind of a shy kid. You wouldn't even believe it, but I was a shy kid because I backed away from these issues because of my insecurity with things. So if I were diagnosed earlier, which they have a lot of proactive programs now in trying to incorporate those problems, learning disabilities right at the beginning of elementary, I think I would have not have had the same kind of, social issues that I had or self-esteem issues that maybe I had. I might have excelled in school. It's hard to think about that, but I don't think that I would have been the same person that I am now because of the things that I learned. And it's interesting because when people hear that I was dyslexic and that I have now written books, dyslexia doesn't change the fact that you're creative. I've always been creative, and I just had to learn how to be creative in a different way. And that's what I think I can bring to this podcast is as a different, interesting take on how to use your creative side and how to use different tools that people don't actually teach you or tell you or whatever.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Thank you for listening. This episode was recorded at the Farmhouse Recording Studio in Bluffdale, Utah. That's interesting. In fact, I don't think we've ever had this precise discussion before. So
did you not know that about me?
I knew some of it.
You have talked about your neurodivergency before. I mean, it's not that it's obvious, because honestly, it really isn't. You are quirky. That is a given. But I wouldn't actually, I mean, I'd never kind of put you in a box. You just have this, just a beautiful arc of how you look at the world differently. That's one of the things that's kind of just a beautiful, story to tell when you have these challenges that you overcome during, your lifetime, or that you know how to accept about yourself and how to, manage or even amplify is really what I'd like to do with this podcast, kind of amplify those insecurities and just make sure that people, who have those kind of functions or look at the world a little bit differently, feel like there's a safe place. Absolutely. When it comes to, listening and writing and expressing the way that they see and view the world.
Well, and I feel that my experience and my particular flavor of neurodivergency has actually helped me become a better writer, because learning about people has never been something that came naturally for me. Like being able to interact with someone on a very personal level, being able to ask them questions about themselves and being able to have a very natural flow of conversation was something I had to learn. And I didn't get good at it until I was probably in my late 30s, or like within the last 15 years. And that's because of entering the writing world and being forced to put my thoughts in order and look at the lives of other people through the page and be like, I need to figure out how these other people tick. And all of a sudden it's made other people fascinating. And so now, that little reward nugget in my brain lights up, because it's just like, I would love to learn about this person, because maybe I might use those ideas later. And also they're awesome, amazing people, and meeting new people is usually always a delight, and sometimes the neurodivergency kicks me in the butt, because if I'm uncomfortable, because if it's not another writer, all of a sudden I don't know how to relate to this person. And I have to go into my box of, this is how we talk to someone who doesn't share interests with you. And I have to pull out those little prompts of how to talk to that person. And you try not to feel like a stalker because it doesn't come out quite natural. I think I freaked out a poor lady I talked to yesterday. Because all of a sudden I was like very interested. I was like leaning in. I'm like doing all the things you're supposed to do when you talk to another human. And I think it caught her off guard a little bit. But we learn. The reason we don't like being put in boxes, because it's so much more fun to break out of them.
Mm-hmm. I'm a very outgoing person. I kind of we'll go into I became a theater person because you could pretend to be something else in theater, and it didn't really require much reading or comprehension. It's just and so that I feel that a lot of people with my specific diagnosis do go into an artistic state where when being an artist, you can use that creativity that you're constantly storing in your brain as a specific outlet. So a lot of us draw or act or sing, those kind of things, which I have used in my writing because I know a lot about how development of character. I know about story structure. And just kind of painting a picture of a story and how I want to tell it. That's also where a lot of my poetry comes in, because that was a lot of internal struggles that I had when I was younger, kind of tapped into that poetry part of me that needed to be expressed and needed to find a voice. So
coming back to the podcast and coming back to what we would love to provide to the community of writers at large, we want to be a voice for people who find they have challenges, whether you be neurospicy, whether you have any sort of issue that makes reading or writing or expressing yourself difficult. We kind of want to be your advocate and your voice.
Exactly.
And highly entertaining.
I hope so. We'd also love to hear from you. So we'll make sure that you get a contact to...
You can try that again.
We'd also love to hear from you guys, our audience. We want to make sure that you are addressed. And if you have any questions or comments, and we'd love to hear from you, you can find us at our website. That's squirrelpodcast.com. We're also you can find us on Facebook and Instagram.
And we will put all of those links in our description because we would love to hear from you, and we want to make it as easy as possible because life is hard.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us today, and we hope you enjoy the Squirrel Podcast.
Huzzah!
End scene. Thank you for listening to the Squirrel Podcast for the Distracted Writer with Candace J. Thomas and Jodi L. Milner. This episode was recorded at the Farmhouse Recording Studio. Please like and subscribe to our podcast for updates and new episodes, and find more information at our website, squirrelpodcast.com. Stay distracted, everyone. I don't exactly know what to say now.
Maybe just something catchy and that we can end the idea and the thought on.
Arrgh.
You got this.